All right, you're welcome to the program. I am Deji. As we speak today, there are 68 political parties in the country, and we're not done registering political parties yet. INEC says there are quite a number of applications sitting down on its table as we speak, and so before the 2019 general election comes, there's every possibility that the number of political parties may increase to about 100, if not more than that. And it does not appear that political parties will be deregistered, especially those 68 will be deregistered. And of course, as you're aware, as we speak today, there are quite a number of candidates. And of course, that's quite understandable. When you have so many political parties, you would have, of course, naturally, quite a number of candidates now. The fact is that the 2019 general elections may set a record in terms of the number of political parties that will be participating. There's every likelihood that over 100 political parties may be taking part in that election. And if you look at the field of, I'm talking about the presidential field now, if you like, there are quite a number of persons who are planning to run for the presidential election. So there's every likelihood, too, that we might have the highest number of presidential candidates. Of course, you would expect that as we move closer to 2019, there will be mergers and probably alliances and all of that. But the fact is that there are very many political parties in the country today. So how healthy is that for our democracy? I'm now being joined on the program by two gentlemen. I have Chikechude, who's a political affairs analyst, and I also have Nelson Ekojimi, who's a political affairs analyst as well as election monitor. And let me start with you, Nelson. You have monitored elections in this country. I remember the first election in 1999 that we had in this country. The ballot paper was probably half of this.
Yeah, very true.
Yes, the ballot paper was just this.
Very true.
2011, the ballot paper got longer. 2015.
Very true.
And 2019, there's a possibility we might have 2 pages of ballot papers.
Yeah, definitely.
So what do you make of that?
Well, one fact we must take home is that we operate a constitutional democracy in which the right of people to associate is very, very much enshrined. It must not be violated. And these political parties coming on board now are fulfilling that constitutional provisions. But looking at the plethora of political parties that we'll be having on the ballot papers makes one scared. One, I'm afraid that, I'm happy one.
Because you have monitored elections, yes, you've seen how difficult sometimes.
I know when you look at the number of void ballot papers we have after elections. You realize that a lot of times when people thumbprint on party X, in trying to fold the ballot paper, the ink on their hand, on their thumb, would
and insert on. It takes to go through all the political parties.
And you look at the complexity that will be faced by the electoral umpire, that will be faced by even all the stakeholders. So for me, I think we should be looking at a mechanism.
And we can't, there's the law does not allow, the law allows for freedom of association.
Yes,
and
but
I'm
looking at us having a mechanism whereby, because don't forget that time and time again, when elections are approaching, some of these political parties are commercial ventures. What I mean by that is that when election is just a few days away, they will say, oh, we don't have a candidate, we are adopting party candidate A. Whatever must have transpired between that party that is adopting that has failed to fulfill the purpose for which a party was set up. Because a party is set up or established to campaign and contest for political office. It must have its own program. No party is set up or established to go and adopt the candidate and manifesto of another party. So I think the time has come for us to look at our electoral system. That how can we navigate that process such that we don't violate or undermine the provisions of the Constitution.
I also want us to talk about the cost. Chike, let me get your view on this because it's quite worrisome. First is we're looking at the logistics of it. You have a prescribed time now for voting, for instance, on election day, probably between 8 and 2 or 3 o'clock. And if you have so many political parties on the ballot and you have you know, a ballot sheet that is longer, probably twice of what I'm holding now, and then you have 2 pages. You know, the time it even takes for you to begin to search out your political party, to now thumbprint and all of that, there will be some kind of time wasting there.
Yeah, there would be. Definitely, there are consequences for that. But again, you are looking at the bigger picture, the fundamental issues. Do you abridge the rights of the citizens in consonance with the Constitution to, you know, freely associate and all of that on the basis of either convenience, you know, for instance, at the polling booth, and maybe again in terms of the
cost.
There's
a cost to this.
The cost,
ballot materials.
You know, so I think, you know, the reality is that it's not something, like I said, you cannot, there are things that are much more fundamental, really. All of these other things are, you know, inconveniences that could also have implications, just like Nelson tried to explain, the fact that you might want to, you know, do this, somebody is trying to turn the paper, and then your ink gets into the wrong place, and then people begin to gather around. They want to question whether it should be voided or not, and all of that. So these are some of the consequences of that, you know. But there's also the bigger picture, you know, sometimes, and that is the fact that, you know, in an ideal democracy, a political party sometimes is not set up to win elections in a state. It could just be for a local government area. It could just be a party that is interested in the environment, for instance, and wants to make a, you know, a point.
The impression I get these days is that most of the political parties are just set up for the presidential election.
Yeah, there is that possibility, because he also made a point, which is also fundamental. But then again, yes, at the end of the day, you push your party to a particular level, and then you suddenly realize that the dominant political parties, you know, are looking for small parties to also endorse them and all of that. So in the process, money changes hands and all of that. But then beyond that again, because once that happens, then you begin to question the capacity of these parties in the first place. And that would also tell you that perhaps somewhere along the line, INEC has made some mistakes or compromised a little bit, because there is a criteria, you know, for registration of political parties.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not just an all-comers thing. You want to register a party, you just, and then, you know, by executive fiat, the parties are registered. No, you're supposed to provide offices in 24, in 2/3 of the states in the country. Some of these offices, you know, or your executives are supposed to be manned by individuals and the rest. So, and the thinking behind that is that, or the underpinning behind that thinking is that once you have a party that is able to have spread in about 2/3 of all the states of the country, then you're talking about capacity. That party has capacity. You understand? So if you now have a situation, yes.
Let me ask you this: from what you have observed, from you move around, you move around this city, Lagos, for instance. Today you have 68 registered political parties. You move around. Do you see the offices of these 68 political parties?
No, I must tell you that it's not just even seeing the offices. It's also knowing about them, being aware of, you know, the existence of these political parties. They are just very few, very, very few. You know, you can count them on the, you know, tip of your fingers. So that's why I'm saying that perhaps, you know, INEC has shortchanged, or the process has been shortchanged somewhere, because if they have that capacity to have offices, at least in state capitals across 2/3 of the states in the country, about 24 states and the rest, then there's some level of capacity. And that capacity implies that there must be some level of political activity. And if there is that level of political activity, then people like us, as we move around, would be made aware that these parties exist. So there's somewhere along that there's something that is not exactly right in terms of this whole arrangement. But again, beyond that is the fact, again, another argument, that it took the Muslim Brotherhood about 80 years before they could get to power.
In Egypt.
In Egypt. In Spain, one of the dominant political parties now, 100 years. And all of that, they've been struggling all this while and the rest. So sometimes political parties are not just, you know, set up to achieve electoral victory. It's a process, especially, you know, in a country that is, you know, full of contradictions, where, you know, access to funding and so on might be a problem, because the dominant political class, in a way, have cornered most of the resources of the country in a way. So the smaller parties now find it very difficult to actually be major players within the electoral process.
The reason I asked this, and the reason why we're discussing this, is it so difficult, for instance, for people to say, you know, just look at, say, 4 or 5 political parties in the country, and then look just make a choice and join one of them instead of, you just wake up, you want to set up your own political party, to be the chairman of that political party and be everything. Because the fact is that whether we like it or not, I mean, you have covered, you've monitored several elections in this country. There is a cost to this, whether we like it or
Very
not.
true, very
the
true.
cost of the next election, with the number of political parties we'll have, will definitely should go up far and above.
Definitely,
what was
because
spent
if
in
you have
2015.
just 5 political parties, at most at the polling units you have 5 political parties agents. So now you are even looking at confusion at the polling units.
Let's just say even if there were 30 political parties,
because you expect that, but the reality, a lot of times, most of these parties are commercial ventures. All they do, just like you have rightly, it's just like what happens with our religious institutions. You see one church or one religious institution will have several branches on the same street, and you want to ask yourself, why can't you just be one and have your gathering that will look more responsible and more focused on your vision. But the truth of the matter is that when elections is approaching, some people have even, as we are sitting down here, some people have even taken up that idea that, look, one of the ways to become rich, one of the ways to attract public attention or to get yourself, well pleased, is for you to form a political party. And when elections are coming, you go and negotiate. Okay, what are you going to give us? We are going to merge our name under your own identity. So I think the major problem we have, like we have both analyzed, is the fundamental. And the fundamental is that under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as we sit down here today, the right to associate is sacrosanct. That is why a lot of times when INEC had the registered political parties and they went to court, that was the basis with which the court said, no, you don't have the right to deregister, to tell anybody they cannot associate. So long as the association is not running counter to the provisions of the Nigerian Constitution. So I think we must look for a way, whether the electoral umpire, like you said, will be up and doing, so that a lot of these parties who fulfill all those righteousness to get registered and they believe that they have gotten the ticket to their mail, must be separated from those who are really interested in fulfilling what a political party is set up. Like I agree, the political party must not win every election. You can just be there to propagate an ideal. But one of the parameters for a political party is that it must contest elections. It must have its own manifesto. That this is what we have set up to address. Because a political party is not just a tea party. It's about addressing challenges, confronting the society. That, look, we have a solution to the problems. These are the ways we'll go about it.
And unfortunately, you look at all these political parties, basically, no ideology, including the big ones. They're basically the same thing. They do almost the same thing. You look at their manifestos, basically the same.
Yeah. Well, I think that has been the challenge. And then if ultimately you ask yourself, I mean, we are used to, especially our politicians, are used to, talking about 18 years of unbroken democracy and all of that. But the issue you ask yourself is, okay, 18 years of unbroken democracy, what have we been able to achieve? You understand, for these 18 years, what have we been able to change in the country and all of that? So you find out that there are certain fundamentals that we are not exactly, pursuing. But again, I think the good thing about that is that, again, the fact that there's always that opportunity for the maybe ruling political class at any particular point in time, to conduct itself in ways that cause so much disaffection within the polity, that when it now gets to election, the people have an opportunity to change such a party. And we saw that happen in 2015. Maybe it might happen in 2019 or whatever, but each time this happens, a message is sent to the political class. But that look.
Very quickly, let me ask you this: would you suggest? It's something that I'm just thinking about. Would you suggest that one way to check this proliferation of parties, for instance, is to probably have a law to say, look, okay, we've registered you, but you cannot adopt any candidate. You have to field your own candidate for elections.
Well, one can look at it that way.
No, I'm just asking because he said
Very
something.
possible.
The fact is that some of these political parties, no doubt, and you also confirmed that they were set up as commercial ventures. At the end of the day, they're just waiting.
I think what is more practicable, and what will not be at variance with the provisions of our Constitution with regards to the certain fundamental rights of the individual and associations. Because once we look at it from that perspective, then there is the issue again of legality and constitutionality.
No, I'm just saying, is this something we should begin to think about?
But
maybe say, oh, look, if you're contesting, then you have to fill candidates for so and so. Maybe this number.
I don't know whether that can stand muster when you take it to the courts again. The courts might have a different view about that particular thing. But there was something you suggested or you talked about earlier, and that is the fact that for those parties that are truly pro-Nigerian, national parties with a sense of vision and mission, to say, look, we lack capacity. We cannot make an impact, even perhaps at maybe federal constituency level or maybe local government level and the rest. Let us look for a partnership. Let us look for ways to work together with other
And the
political
question
parties.
You ask yourself, why did you set up the party in the first place?
Well, that is it. So it comes back, to that issue. Yeah.
But let's just quickly take a short break now. We'll come back, and when we come back, let's briefly talk about the presidential field, if you like, today, and the number of persons who are taking part. We'll be right back. Stay with us. On Deji 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent.
Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that band.
Deji 360, providing clarity to issues. All right, welcome back. I still have Achike Chude here and, of course, Nelson Ekunjimi. Nelson, let me start with you. You look at the political arena today, especially the presidential field, quite a number of people indicating interest to run for the presidency. You look at the number today, you get the impression that 2019, we're probably going to have the highest number of presidential candidates. So what do you make of that?
Well,
even though some have actually not even indicated.
Well, the truth of the matter is that when you see some of the candidates, you want to ask yourself that there's people have taken the presidential office to be a joke or what have you. But be that as it may, I think it's also a good development, that people are aspiring. One only hopes that with the level of awareness, the level of consciousness to aspire for the office of the presidency, that we also have such consciousness at other levels, of governance, be you local government chairman, council, such that at the end of the day, the people will have quality representation. And also, it is not enough for us to have all these candidates. We must also be interested in educating the electorate that what are they really looking for in some of these candidates. It's not enough for somebody to just say, I want to lead you. We must be ready to ask, what have you done? What do you have on the table? What can you guarantee that you do in the next 4 years or what have you? So by and large, for me, it's part of the exercise of people's fundamental right that, the right to vote and be voted for. But, I know very well that as time goes on, some of those candidates will either fuse into the parties because we don't operate a non-party democracy, or they will fizzle out.
Achike, if I told you tomorrow that I was going to run for the presidency, of course, would you support me? Because it could happen, to be candid. You look at the number, it just could happen. I don't need to belong to any political party to declare my intention.
Well, I think there's a passage from scripture that talks about maybe the possibility of a general going to war. And then he's required to ask himself what he has, his wherewithal. you know, and then also take stock of what the opposing general has. So is he going to be able to defeat that general with what he has? And then if he doesn't have that, he should go ahead and make peace with the advancing general before he gets to the gate of his kingdom, because you know the implication. So it's about also preparation. It's not like he suggests the other time, it's not a tea party. It's a big one, it's the big one. So you want to do that. You know, you have looked at yourself, your wherewithal, the kind of, you know, support base, your financial base and all of those things, because everybody knows that elections are expensive, more so in a country like Nigeria. So if you want to, it depends on what you want to do. Do you want people to know that you once ran for the presidency? You know, and that's just what you intended to achieve.
That
what
could be a reason to achieve.
Well, perhaps. Because I am not in a position to assess people's,
in actual fact, we've had perennial presidential candidates,
you know, financial ability and so on. You know, but the reality is that sometimes when you look, you want to believe, look, if this person wants to do this, perhaps, you know, he is a mature person. He knows what he wants. He knows the implication of what he's trying to do. So he must have some financial war chest somewhere, because you need money. It's not just money that is needed to bribe the electorate, which the politicians do at will. They bribe at world congresses. They bribe, you know, in state conventions, you know, or state congresses of parties and so on, you know,
up to the real election.
Up to the real election and so on. They do that. But you also need money for posters. You need money to be on the airways. You need money to be on television and on radio and so on. And they cost a lot. So if you don't have money to be able to make yourself visible to the electorate, then the question one we ask is, what exactly are you doing?
You need money to campaign across the 36 states of this country. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, well, earlier I spoke to one of the presidential candidates. He is running for the presidency. Of course, it doesn't belong to any political party at the moment. He says he's still consulting, and that quite a number of political parties are talking to him. When we come back, of course, you're going to hear from that presidential candidate.